We've started.
All right, wonderful. Well, welcome everybody to the 7th meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee for the town of East Greenbush. We're really excited to be here. I know that we have been holding conference calls and Zoom meetings over the course of the last several months, but we're excited to be socially distant in the same room together to be discussing the draft, I'm going to say preliminary draft comprehensive plan. Before we do move on, I would like to ask Andrew to do a quick roll call for those people that might be listening in on the live stream so they know who is present here sitting around the table. So, Andrew.
All right, so we'll go ahead and start with the town staff. So Jack Conway, Adam Gelski, Dahlia Sarsowitz.
Here.
Sarsowitz.
Sarowitz. That's okay.
And as far as the committee, Robert Lehman, Ralph Viola is indicated that he may be late, but he does have a conflict tonight. John Conway. Here. Dave Becker. Victoria Manieri. Steve Obermeyer. And Guy Warner also let us know that he will not be here. He has a conflict as well. That's it. And then from the consultant team is myself, Andrew Gilchrist, and Jeff Yates.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. All right, so what do we have planned for you this evening? What we are hoping to do, we'll go through very quickly in terms of a project update, but then we really want to get into an overview of the preliminary draft comprehensive plan document. And so we want to kind of walk through what that is, how it's laid out, how it's organized, how we got to the point where we are here with that draft document. We then want to talk about public engagement and what that might look like for this next round of engagement as we present the draft plan to the public. And then lastly, we want to talk about what those next steps might be in the scheduling for those next steps. So, quick update, there has been a lot of work done, and we were just talking with Adam prior to the meeting about how fortunate we were in the point of the process that we were able to compile all of the work that had been completed up until March into this draft document. There had been a substantial amount of work done by this committee in the community leading up to that March timeframe, and a good part of that was the public engagement. We developed a public outreach plan, public open house meeting #1 here, extremely well attended. We had the second public workshop with the speed round discussions, which was a lot of fun, high energy, again well attended. The online community survey, over 780 responses by community members for that survey, which is a significant number of responses. Series of stakeholder meetings over multiple days. And again, it's not the online community survey. I was trying to see if you guys were paying attention. We just had one survey. We also, the consultant team, we pulled together what we're calling the community profile, and we worked with a lot of the town staff to finalize that. But it's really your existing conditions and an inventory of what you have here in your community now, and what some of the needs and opportunities might be moving forward. We've held 6 committee meetings, working sessions with you as a group, and through that we were able to develop the draft vision, preliminary goals, guiding principles, and a series of preliminary recommendations, which you will see as we walk through and as you have an opportunity to review the draft plan, and you have more time to review that. We've expanded on some of those preliminary recommendations. What has been ongoing, or what will be in progress to come, continued community engagement. So that would be kind of the final engagement piece of this committee and this committee's work, and it would function as the public hearing for this committee, and I'll explain why that is important as we move forward. And then, this is for what I'm talking about now for the ongoing and in progress is for this committee's work. There's a whole other series of engagement opportunities and a required public hearing once this document gets to the town board level. We have been working with the town staff to provide information for the webpage for this project. There will be another committee meeting to finalize this draft comprehensive plan. And then our team will be working on revisions to the plan based on feedback from this group, from town staff, as well as anything that comes in from the public during that process that this committee feels should be addressed. So yes, we fully expect there to be revisions and edits to the plan that is before you today. So with this, what we wanted to do today is really to provide kind of a high-level overview for you of that document that you got in your inbox or the link that you got on your inbox on Friday. We did not expect you to take the time to review that. We wanted you to have that, and if you had a glance and had any high-level questions about the organization or how we came up with certain aspects of that, that's what this is for, to kind of talk through that. What we're hoping to be able to do as we walk through this, and Andrew and I are going to be both walking you through this evening, is to answer any of those high-level questions that you have, get some initial feedback, but we are going to leave you with some homework this evening, where we do want more detailed feedback. We'd like for you to take the opportunity to digest this and dive into it a little more deeply. So the way that the plan is organized, it's set up into these sections. There are 11 different sections. The first section is an introduction, followed by the vision and guiding principles, and then each section after that is a guiding principle with the goals supporting that guiding principle. And you'll remember we talked through these guiding principles together at multiple meetings, and so we've organized and structured the document based on those guiding principles. So those themes kind of carry through. And I will note that there is a lot of overlap in some of these guiding principles. And so sometimes if you are expecting a recommendation to be within one section under one guiding principle, if it's not there, hopefully it's in another. And so it's the question that we always have internally is, where is it most appropriate to be? And these are the types of things that we certainly want to hear some feedback from all of you. So going through each of those guiding principles, there's placemaking, economic growth, transportation and mobility, neighborhoods and housing, recreation, natural resources, agriculture and the environment, and then governance and infrastructure. So those are your guiding principles. And there are specific recommendations identified for each of those sections and to support each of those guiding principles. Then section 10 is the future land use. Recall we've had some discussions with this committee as well as with the town board with regard to future land use, and that essentially kind of sets up any potential changes for your zoning to be consistent with your comprehensive plan. So that future land use section is its own separate section in the comprehensive plan. And then finally, and I think probably one of the most important sections, is the implementation section. So we want to make sure that this comprehensive plan update document leaves you with a roadmap in terms of next steps. And how do you implement those next steps? And who implements those next steps? Okay? And so the implementation section, I will say right now, is still in progress. And that is part of what the homework assignment will be for this group this evening, is to help shape that implementation section. So we'll get into that in a little bit more. Now, supporting this draft plan is a series of appendices. So we purposely wanted to make sure that the document, the plan itself, was not overly burdensome and quite honestly was not a doorstopper, right? We wanted to make sure that this is a document that people could pick up, easily read, understand, and get a really quick grasp of what direction the community wants to be heading in and how you are going to get there. But we recognize it is important to support each and every one of those recommendations and identify how you got there and why it's important to have this recommendation. So what we have done is included that supporting documentation, that supporting information as appendices to your plan. So it will be a part of the plan, but they are separate appendices. So we have, as part of the appendices, the community profile. Remember, that's the inventory, the existing conditions, needs, opportunities that were identified. The community outreach process and plan, so that helps to explain how a lot of this input was gathered. Summaries of all the stakeholder meetings, summaries of all of the input and feedback we got from the public at the public workshops. We also did an analysis of past planning efforts. There have been a substantial amount of past planning efforts that the town has undertaken, and those did factor in and have been very informative through this process. And then we also did a series of technical investigation items. So we took a little deeper dive into several topic areas like transportation, like infrastructure, the sewer and water infrastructure, so that we could have a better understanding of what those needs are, and we could map out more clearly what the recommendations should be. And then we have the summary of the online community survey. So quickly, I'm going to walk through the introduction. This is the first thing that people are going to read, hopefully, when they open up the comprehensive plan document. So we wanted to make sure that it clearly laid out, who is the town of East Greenbush? What is the town of East Greenbush? And what do you stand for, right? What's important? Why are you undertaking this process? And so we have highlights of the community profile. Again, the full profile is in the appendix if somebody's interested in understanding more, but again, highlights of that. We talk about this planning process that the town just engaged in and why it's important. We talk about the engagement, and then we lay out the organization of the plan itself, so that folks that are not familiar with a comprehensive plan or might not be familiar with the process can understand how to use the plan and where to find information. It might seem very simple, but it makes a difference, we have found, to clearly lay out the plan. And one of the things I do want to point out in this kind of circle in the upper right-hand corner, there are a series of icons that you will see we are utilizing throughout the document that represent the guiding principles that this group has identified. And so Andrew can talk about it a little bit more. So questions at this point from the committee?
Well, I just see the 2040 in the middle of the icons, and it starts off the vision statement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to talk about this now, but I know we had a discussion about this before, but I'm not sure that I'm 100% comfortable with the 2040 thing.
Okay.
In terms of the vision statement, I think just a simple in the future for me would be sufficient, or something like that.
Are you saying the logo?
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. This is just for committee discussion at this point in time.
Yeah. So, I mean, the vision statement says, in the year 2040, East Greenbush will be this and that and this and that. And I don't know why we picked the year 2040. I was part of the discussion, so I understand that we
Yeah.
because enough in the future, but not too far in the future.
Okay. That's an easy change, if that's the
Well, I mean,
direction. Yeah,
if
Victoria,
the rest of the committee is comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with it either way. They will, check back in with everyone else. I know we've kind of talked about it before. And we've talked about some of the potential hang-ups about using that 2040 and how it can throw some people off at first.
So how about this? Because we were aware that there were two members who weren't going to be able to join us this evening, and so we were going to follow up with an email kind of summarizing the conversation today. Why don't we put that as a question out to the committee?
That's fine with me.
That work?
I can live with either way, but just, I think it's time to agree with that.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we did go around on that. Yeah, so this is the time to be having the discussion and making any changes. All right. So with that, in the year 2040 or sometime in the future, this is your vision. I'm not going to read through it. Everybody has seen this previously, but I just want to highlight that to kick things off in this plan is the vision. Right, so this is kind of the overarching guide for all of the elements that are in this planning document. So we have the guiding principles, and and then we have goals to support the guiding principles. Well, the goals and the guiding principles all support the vision. Then there are specific recommendations for each of the guiding principles and goals. They all support the vision. And so it's all one fluid, complete document, ultimately supporting this vision. So then moving on, what I'm going to do is to turn it over to Andrew at this point in time, and he's going to just give a quick reminder of each of the guiding principles, and then he's going to tie it back to the handout that the committee has right now, which is, we're calling it the recommendations worksheet. All right. So this is the part where we're going to be looking for input and feedback from you over the next couple of weeks. So, Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
So what I'm going to do at this point is just walk through since it's been a while since we've all met. I'm going to walk through guiding principles again. So these are the next sections of the comprehensive plan. So each one of the guiding principles has its own section. And the way that each of the sections is outlined is it starts with the guiding principle and the goals. And then following that is an overview or some background information relating the town to that particular topic area. Following that overview is a discussion of challenges and opportunities related to that particular topic area. So those are the challenges and opportunities that we learned through our stakeholder meetings or meetings with all of you, public input, survey, discussions with town staff. And then following the challenges and opportunities are the recommended actions. And so these are the recommended actions that, when implemented, are achieving the goals and the vision, but they also address those challenges and opportunities that have been identified. So it's sort of a process through it. As you go through, you learn a little bit about the topic, you learn about what the challenges and opportunities are, and here are some potential recommendations to address those challenges and opportunities. So I'm just going to walk through these very briefly. I'm going to read the guiding principle. I won't go through all the goals you have heard before, but just to remind everyone. So the first one is placemaking. This one is encourage a strong sense of place and unique identity, including recognized town and hamlet centers with a mix of land uses that attract residents, businesses, and visitors, and are supportive of all generations while celebrating the town's history and small town feel. Some of the recommendations, I'll just read a couple of them just to give a sense of the types of recommendations that are included in this section. The first one is create walkable nodes with unique identifiable character that have access to services, housing, and commercial establishments. Another one, this topic also includes historic resources of the town. So the next one is preserve the character of the town's historic settlements, neighborhoods, and hamlets, including Hampton Manor, Heights, East Greenbush, Best, and Luther. Enhance gateways into the town and hamlets. Evaluate form-based zoning and design guidelines along Route 9 and 24. These are just some examples of some of the recommendations that are included in this section. And I will explain a little bit more once I get to the implementation section about what exactly we're hoping to do with this worksheet here. So moving on to economic growth. Guiding principle for economic growth, engage in sustainable managed growth that balances community character and quality of life with tax-based generating opportunities and increased access to employment. Focus commercial growth along key corridors and support thriving town and hamlet centers with local businesses. You can see how there's some overlap there with the placemaking as well. Transportation and mobility. Enhance walking and biking facilities to create better connections between neighborhoods, town and hamlet centers, and encourage transit choices. Evaluate and apply methods to improve circulation for people and goods along key commercial and residential corridors. Neighborhoods and housing. Preserve the character of existing neighborhoods and historic hamlets while creating new quality housing options. Provide housing options to attract new community members that may work in town or surrounding communities, and retain existing residents while providing housing opportunities for residents of all ages. Recreation. Expand inclusive, passive, and active recreational spaces and programming of all scales throughout the town. Create gathering places and activity centers which foster community-oriented activities and pride in the town. Natural resources, agriculture, and the environment. I just wanted to note with this section here, a lot of information we were able to learn about and gather from the natural resources inventory. Inventory is the work group for that as well. That kind of served as a real foundation for us in looking at the comprehensive plan update. So the guiding principle here: embrace, promote, and celebrate important natural resources. Maintain and improve water and air quality, as well as wildlife habitat. Support active farms, agribusiness, and agritourism. And finally, the last guiding principle relates to governance and infrastructure. Promote fiscal responsibility and enhance governmental efficiencies with a positive service approach. Ensure transparency and equity in decision making. Allocate adequate resources for the communities to provide essential services. Upgrade the infrastructure to support a growing community and its need to adapt to emerging technologies. So those are the guiding principles that are really kind of form the foundation of the plan.
So I'm going to intervene just go back to that last one and then maybe pause for a moment to see if there are any questions from the committee members about how this is organized within the document itself, and if it makes sense, or if you have some questions about that.
If this makes sense.
So moving on to the future land use section. So this section, along with the future land use map, which I have on the next slide here, this really sets the direction for future land use regulations and decision making. While the future land use is not zoning, it does provide the guidance for recommending zoning changes following the adoption of the comprehensive plan. So when we're looking at making the zoning in compliance with the comp plan, this is one of the areas that we're looking at. So the future land use map, just in terms of how it was created, it was created with input from all of you, from the committee. As you'll recall, we had several sessions developing the map, but it's also from input from the public and stakeholder meetings as well, to learn about those key areas that should either remain the same in the future or change in the future. But in terms of the future land use map, some of the key highlights, the focus of the future land use includes the most intense and greatest mix of uses along key activity centers and along key corridors, and also the protection of critical environmental areas and rural and scenic areas of the town. So here is the future land use map that we all developed together. And I'll just read through what the different future land uses are, just kind of listed here. So this includes a primary activity center, secondary activity centers. These are those sort of nodes, those areas of activity to focus. Yeah, so the nodes are located, the primary node is located here at the 924 intersection, and then there are the secondary activity nodes located key areas along the transportation corridors as well. Then we have the commercial mixed use and neighborhood mixed use. These are sort of those linear corridors along 920 as well as along 4. Then we have neighborhood residential. These are the more traditional neighborhood areas of the town. Then there's office commercial, as well as regional commercial, those the more commercial areas of town. Education, the rural and low-density residential areas, those primarily rural areas of town. Research, design, and technology, that encompasses the areas that include Albany and Regeneron, those types of corporate establishments. Then we have the light industrial areas and waterfront industrial along the waterfront, and the agriculture and open space, primarily down in the southwestern portion of the town along the river. So moving along to the implementation section, this is the section that primarily describes how to implement the plan. What are the steps after the plan is actually adopted? So one of the first steps following the adoption of the plan is to update the zoning and ensure the alignment with the plan. The plan will also include, which is one of the things that we're still working on, part of the homework we have for all of you, is the implementation matrix. So this is sort of the guide for determining sort of the prioritization of the recommendations, but it also it identifies potential project lead and partners for each recommendation. So project lead, for many of them, it might be the town, but it could also be a nonprofit or another organization. And partners, who may be the potential partners to help implement a project. Again, it might be a corporation, it might be the school district, it could be a nonprofit. It also identifies potential funding sources. Are there grant opportunities that might be out there to help implement a particular action? We want to identify those as well. And then finally, it'll include a status column to help track the progress. This is sort of the implementation matrix itself can act as its own document. You write on Adam's desk and he can start checking them off as or whoever's desk it might be. But it's just a tracking column to help track the status of the recommendations of the plan.
And that tracking status makes it very easy to be able to do, an annual report of, what has been accomplished. And then when you get to, a 5-year mark, which we would recommend that you reevaluate, maybe not update entirely, but reevaluate, you have been tracking that, all along, so it makes it easier to determine what's been accomplished, what hasn't been accomplished, where might the town need to be focusing on to start some of the recommendations that may not have been started yet. So it can serve as a working tool.
So that brings us to the worksheet that you all have in front of you. So what we're looking to do is to identify the prioritization of those recommendations. And so one place where we want to start with that is to get input from all of you about what you feel would be either short-term, mid-term, or long-term. Short-term are sort of those 1 to 2 year time frame, mid-term, 3 to 5, and then long-term, 5 or more years, typically. In terms of when to start, or how long, when to address each recommendation. So in this within this workbook, we have all of the sections of the guiding principles. So it will include the guiding principle as well as a table with each of the recommendations. And then there are columns to fill out what you feel that it should be a short, mid, or long-term recommendation. This will help us to develop the implementation matrix. Actually, the implementation matrix will just be an expansion of what you have in front of you here. And in terms of the timing for the review of the comp plan and also for the worksheet, we thought perhaps by September 4th, 2 weeks to get feedback back from all of you. Does that make sense? Does that work for everyone?
And we we do recognize that, some of that feedback that we get from you as a committee might be additional recommendations, or it might be crossing out a recommendation because you don't agree with it and don't believe that it needs to be a part of the document. So we recognize that this all is a work in progress, which is part of the process. So we do recognize that, but this will help us to narrow it down. And just so you know what we will do following that, and I'm going to just move on to this because we will be talking about how all of this gets translated and communicated back to the public, so that the public has an opportunity to weigh in on this plan once this committee is comfortable with the draft document. And so we want to be able to present something to the public, including the implementation section and the prioritization, to get feedback, to say, hey, does this align with what the broader community agrees with? Because at the end of the day, there will be resources that will need to be put into the implementation of the plan, whether it's time or financial resources. And so it's helpful for the community and your town board to know what is a priority from the public and what is the public and the greater community going to support, in terms of a short-term recommendation or something that is important but maybe not as important. And so if that's something that can get tackled 5 years from now, okay, or you need other things to happen in order for that to occur. So before we go into the public engagement section, just want to pause here for a moment and see if there's any initial comments, initial thoughts that the committee or the staff, Adam, you and Dahlia, I know I've shared some comments already, but if there's anything that you wanted to get questions about, or something that you were just wondering about, or just some initial comments.
Well, I've got a thought. And it goes back to the previous thought. Because I think one of my problems with the 2040 date there, the main thing is, then it looks like a 20-year plan, which is kind of not like a comprehensive plan. It's a 20-year plan. So when you look at the implementation matrix, is that the sort of time frame we should be thinking about, do you think? Or, I think if you think in terms of a 20-year plan, then I think nobody really has to think about this plan for another 15 years, right? That's my fear.
Well, I will say one of the things that we include in the implementation section is that it should be, at the very least, evaluated and reviewed every 5 years. It doesn't mean a full update, but every 5 years, even more so, to have some sort of an implementation committee that can help to support the implementation of these recommendations on a more regular basis. For that very reason, John, because it's, 2040 is included, like that's, this is, in 20 years, hopefully all of this has been accomplished and you have reached your vision for that point in time. That's kind of what the 2040 is. It does not mean that this document should be static and should not be evaluated during that time period. If the last few months have shown a light on anything, it's that every day something changes and it's different. And you do the best you can to try to plan for that, but you do need to take stock in where you are, kind of take a step back, look at where you are, identify if you're still heading in the right direction to achieve your vision. Is your vision still accurate based on where you are? So it is important to take a look at that prior to that end time frame for the vision, if you will. So we can understand the concern there, but I think the key is making sure that there are steps integrated into the implementation to make sure that doesn't happen. Right? It is a working document. Yeah.
I would follow up just as an initial maybe consideration for priority. I mean, there's, and I don't want to complicate it necessarily, but short, mid, and long term there's also a time element to that. So, I'm thinking for maybe we have another column or color that's sort of high priority, medium to low, and then cause some high priority items may take a long time, you know what I mean? So it's something, to John's point, like, this one's gonna need to be looked at every year for the next 5 years, but it's a high priority, so we have to start it sooner. Kind of to address, John, what you said, but also, this is simpler, for sure, you know,
Maybe, here's a suggestion, maybe one thing we can offer here, is that the prioritization is for that short term, and I would say it would be like 0 to 2 years, like immediately, to short term, midterm, long term is when you initiate the recommendation. And maybe we can specify that and we can modify this so that it's, you know, this recommendation should be initiated within the short term. So within 0 to 2 years. And it might be a recommendation that it will take 3 years, 5 years, it's an infrastructure related thing, to actually complete. But maybe that's a way to keep it somewhat straightforward, but make it clearer what that priority is. And if it's a high priority, it is something that needs to be initiated within the short term. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, and I guess you know, if everything is, we need to initiate in the short term, there's a resource challenge associated with that, so that would be where the sort of prioritization comes in. So if we have 5 short-term, you know, actions, but only one of them is high priority, you know, and we have fewer resources, that would help us kind of use this as, okay, we needed to do this yesterday. Kind of thing.
So,
Yeah, I can't read the room.
I know, I can't, it's hard to see it on, clearly. So let us then, and we were going to email this to you, you can certainly check it out by hand if you want, but we're gonna send you a fillable PDF, so you can just text.
Good, so you don't have to see all the scribble button.
Oh, but if you want us to, we would be more than happy to read them. So let us modify this just a little bit based on Adam's suggestion, and I think, what we might do also is to just add that other comment, that, what, in your mind, what are the highest priorities within each of the guiding principles?
I think if there's another, if there's different words that we can use instead of like high priority, because I understand the point that Adam is making. I worry that some people, when they start seeing high priority, that means something that is not, is low priority, and that will just fall away eventually, kind of thing. Which obviously everyone's task at hand is to make sure that that won't happen. But I'm just wondering if there's perhaps better word choice too that can perhaps clarify that so no one makes that mistake. And
Yeah, we can. We will update this and get this to you guys tomorrow. See, I can't see with his mask on. But yeah, I think to that point, when this gets translated into the document itself, the planning document itself, and the public has the opportunity to review this, we want to make sure that it's clear to the public as well. Other discussions, initial reactions that we wanted to kind of talk through today. At this point, I know you guys have not had much time, and it's a pretty, well, we tried to make it a user-friendly and workable document. It's still a hefty document.
I don't really have any questions or concerns at this point, but I just haven't had time to review this one.
On this, just to be clear, on the recommendations, this is a pretty preliminary draft list, and Victoria's markups you would want to see.
We actually
Elimination
would.
added. Okay. So it's, you know, we can add, subtract, pare down.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. This is the first time this committee has seen this. This draft that you have before you, has gone through an initial round of comments and edits with the town. There are some, with town staff, Adam and Delia, you might see some highlighted sections in there, more follow-up. There are some, and Adam's been on vacation, so we haven't followed back up with you, but there are some comments that we have, we want to have a little more dialogue with the town staff on to make sure we're understanding. So this is a work in progress right now. But we felt it was at the point where we needed to get feedback from the community while we're continuing this work in progress.
And maybe getting back to Victoria's comment too, another way to make that distinction is to shorten the list and move some actions to another table or another separate list, or, you know, and that way it's like there's no hierarchy set up at first glance, and we're still keeping track of these others. And as we get, you know, as we make progress, we're able to bring those back up and, you know, put them into the main matrix. And that might be just another way to kind of get at that comment, you know, and have a focus, kind of.
That makes sense. And, it sounds like probably along that line, like, as you had mentioned, anything that you might have to do certain steps before you're able to do something, so you can have kind of a breakdown like that.
Yeah, and I think the first step though is getting a little sense from this group in terms of what are we talking about. There might be solid consensus on, you know, the high priority, for lack of a better term right now. And there might not be that many, or there might be 50 high priority projects. So then once we have an understanding of kind of where we are, I think we can talk about how we refine that a little bit more with this committee. Or perhaps we wait to hear feedback from the public. That might help as well. And then we can talk about how best to format that and present that within the plan. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the implementation piece, but I think it's critical that it's mapped out. so that you know, the town understands where it needs to be focusing its efforts, or where it needs to be trying to seek funding to focus its efforts, and the community understands there's a certain expectation from the community members. This is the direction that the town is heading. So a couple of things just in terms of your review of the plan document itself from a logistical perspective. I believe you provided a PDF, correct? A PDF. If you want to mark up the PDF, feel free to do that. If you want to print it out and mark handwritten comments on and get it to us, feel free to do that. We'll coordinate with Adam about how to get that to us. Whatever is the easiest for you as committee members to share comments with us, that would be great. We would ask that you do provide them in writing so we can consolidate them all and work through that in an efficient manner. But yeah, however it works best for you to get us your comments, we'll take them. And it could be comments on, you know, the recommendations. That's really what we'd like to get some initial feedback on. You're seeing a lot of those for the first time. But anything, you know, that you might find in the document that you have comments on, you know, open to this. At the end of the day, this plan and this draft document is your committee document. It should be reflective of what you have been hearing as committee members from the community and what you know in your various roles, you know, within the town, within the community, that might be needed to implement this vision for the town. So that's it. So with that, I would like to move into the public engagement discussion. Okay, so here's where we are. This is where we are right now in terms of public engagement. So we do have Under town law, section 272A, it maps out the requirements for a comprehensive plan process. And when there is a special board appointed, you, this committee, by the town board, that board must hold a single public hearing prior to advancing a draft plan to the town board for consideration. What's interesting is that is the only requirement for public engagement under town law. The town of East Greenbush has taken that and expanded it with a substantial amount of public engagement, and I think that that's been really helpful for us as we've gone through this process, and we hope for the community as well, as you heard from your neighbors here within the town. But we do need to hold that final public hearing. So what we typically do with the third and final public workshop, we couple that with the public hearing. So it'll be formally noticed, and there will be, we will document any comments that come in as part of the formal public hearing process. But we piggyback that with, prior to COVID, what would have been an open house where we have the boards up that show here are the recommendations, here are the proposed prioritization, or high priorities, what do you think? And ask for feedback from the community. We want to talk with you, and I'm not sure that we will come to a final resolution today, but we just wanted to get some ideas in terms of the format for that and the timing of that. Okay, so I think the format we might need to reevaluate as we get closer to when we are scheduling that, because as you know, things are changing on a fairly quick basis in terms of the ability to have in-person public hearing or a socially distant in-person meeting versus some sort of a virtual meeting and handle that virtually. So a couple of things that I wanted to throw out for the committee and the town to think about, and again, we don't need to resolve this evening. I think there are a lot of factors at play in terms of what might make the most sense. But some formats that we have been utilizing, social distance, open houses, we can hold them outside, we can do something like that. One thing I will say, given the previous level of engagement in the town of East Greenbush, I think that we need to be very careful about that because we have had a substantial number of people participate in the open houses. So we would certainly want to think about how we can do that in a way that everyone has an opportunity to see, provide input in a safe manner. We also have the option to do a webinar, interactive webinar, to get feedback. We can host that. We can have an open Zoom, which does get a little more interesting if you're using an open Zoom session to manage public comment back and forth, but we have that option as well. We also can do, for example, we're doing online engagement, and it's a week-long online engagement for one project now where we have an interactive website where folks can go on, view things on the website, and then there's a comment form on the website that they can leave their comments on. So that's another option that we have available to be able to try and get public feedback. We recognize none of these is ideal, right? And it's challenging. Some folks are more comfortable with the online opportunities than others, so we might miss some. What we would do in that instance is, we would work with the town to have a hard copy of the draft plan available that folks can view. We would need to work through the logistics of how we could do that safely, and how that might look, and what that might function be, what the function might be. But these are some of the things that we have been working through in terms of engagement opportunities, and it could be any number or mix of those. Initial thoughts of what we would be, before we get to that, what we would be looking to do is to, should this committee feel comfortable enough with the document after the next 2 weeks and we've looked at it and make revisions to it, to an opportunity for the draft document to be available for public review, at least a few days in advance of the public event, if you will, or the formal public hearing, so they can come with questions, and be a little more informed. We would be looking probably to, either middle or end of September, depending on, what, the level of comfort is with this committee. I know that probably seems quick considering, the pace of the process over the last few months, but that's kind of where we are. The end goal, beyond this committee is to have the town board have the opportunity to consider adoption of this document before the end of the year. So that's kind of what's helping to drive this process. But I'm going to stop there and get initial thoughts from, Adam, you, and Dahlia, and the committee members about format and ideas for engagement formats sometime in September. What your thoughts are, what you think folks might be comfortable with, what we might be able to do from a town perspective as well.
Well, I think, if you're talking about September, I think that things are not gonna be a whole lot different than they are now, my guess. So, it does present a real challenge. I mean, we've gotten very comfortable now with the zoning board, and the format we use there. But we get maybe 3 or 4 people from the public who want to comment. We haven't had any controversial cases lately. And I know from the public input that we've had on this before, that we're going to get a whole lot more than that who are interested in doing it. So it's going to be a problem. And, but as you say, nothing is ideal, and there are technologies out there. So I think we just have to do the best we can with what we've got. I'm feeling pretty comfortable actually with the plan now, and the overall outline of it, and where we are. So I think, in terms of the timeline, the end of September, maybe a little bit more, maybe a few weeks more, but something like that is doable, I think, yeah.
And I think, I lean towards like the web option that you talked about, having like a website up for that where people can go through the material and then comment and questions that way. Perhaps we can maybe work with the library on figuring out a hard copy or kind of advertising at the library where they do have they are open with restrictions and stuff. So that way, some people that might need some assistance can also get it. And especially we're touching September, there's going to be a lot of families that are trying to figure out how to get their kids back to school, so they're not having to worry about going, either sitting down at a computer at one certain time or going out to a public event at a certain time. But just gives them a little more flexibility.
And so, John, with the zoning board, have you been conducting formal public hearings through Zoom as well?
We're doing it through Zoom. We have, I think, members of the public who want to be on Zoom directly with us have been able to do that. Other people have written in, and Adam reads the comments as part of the meeting. But as I say, we haven't had any really controversial cases, and we've had 2 or 3 members
I mean, there have been a few instances where we've had really good discussion and engagement and changes to the project, that Zoom has facilitated. So, I think like the ZBA has done a really good job of managing those meetings. Everybody's pretty comfortable with technology. I would say, my own sense is I like the open week-long, get people whenever they want, whenever they're able to, and then we follow it up with an open house that's maybe in public hearing that's maybe less about the content and more about giving people an opportunity, making sure that we, let them know we blitz as much as we can, that it's out there online, and then, have that in-person opportunity, kind of tie it off and follow it up.
I think that on the same day we can use that webinar that's interactive, that you have the interactive website, and then perhaps do like maybe a Friday from like 12 to 5 or 6, so we can allow people some time to come over. Use all of our resources, post it on Facebook, perhaps we can reach out to the police department, to Parks and Recreation, the library, the own Town of East Greenbush Facebook page. So, just utilize as many resources as we can to get the word out there, and so no one feels like I didn't know.
Right. And maybe, Adam, based on what you just described, utilizing all of those resources, Dahlia, to try to get the word out, perhaps it's the document is available, or the online option is available for a week. And at the end of that week, we have perhaps that kind of, whether it's an in-person or Zoom, the formal public hearing component of that. And while the public hearing would be closed, we could still accept public comment for maybe another week following that. To give the public sufficient time, recognizing, to your point, Victoria, that I think folks are still going to be trying to get settled into a schedule, school schedule, new work schedule, that sort of thing in September when school starts. So perhaps we can look at that and do a combination. I think what we'll do based on this discussion is kind of pull together just a brief proposal, if you will, for the next public engagement. Share that back with the committee and Adam, with you and Dahlia, and the town board as well, to make sure everybody's comfortable with that, and so we can start putting things into place to pull that together. All right. So in terms of next steps, we have the worksheet for you that we will revise slightly based on our conversations today. So that'll be emailed to you tomorrow. It'll be a fillable PDF that you can, complete right within the PDF option, or if you want to print it and mark it out, that's fine as well. As Andrew indicated, we would like to request that come back to us by a week from Friday. So, two work weeks and a weekend, so that'll allow us to kind of digest all of your comments, pull them all together, and if we have any questions, or if there are conflicting, comments or direction, we want to reach back out to you as a committee. And we will be revising the draft plan. So we want to make sure, we'll get that back to you, we want to make sure that you as a committee are comfortable with that before it's publicly released as a draft. And then we will, once we've decided on a time frame for that, at the end of September, we will make that available for public review in the various different platforms that we just described, or a variety of those platforms, and then host the public hearing and the public workshop. So following that, just so you know what the next steps are, we will come together again as a committee, and there will be a formal vote of this committee, if you are comfortable with the draft plan, a formal vote to forward the draft comprehensive plan to the town board for consideration. And then at that point, this committee's work is done, and it is now in the hands of the town board as a legislative body. They are the entity that can adopt the comprehensive plan. And so the town board will work through its process for the comprehensive plan adoption, which does require a public hearing. It does require a seeker evaluation, so State Environmental Quality Review Act evaluation and compliance with that. It does require review by the county planning board as well. So there's a series of steps involved in terms of the adoption process once this goes to the town board. And the town board does have the option to modify the draft plan in any way, should it see fit, or should it hear additional public comment through the public hearing process. So we are rounding the corner to the finish line here, and it's pretty exciting. We are excited when we start to get to this point of a process. So we certainly welcome any comments that you have, and we're eager to hear your input. And if you have questions while you're going through this, you know how to reach us. Don't hesitate to reach out. Anything else from the committee or staff this evening? With that, I want to say thank you to those members of the public that have come out. This is great. We have in-person committee meeting and the public show up since March. This is great. Public comments? Any comments, questions that you might have this evening?
Doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I know a lot of work has gone into this plan, but I think that review and that schedule for adoption should have been changed now drastically because of the way the town, unlike every town in the country, has been shut down for 6 months. You've got this accelerating, I think, toward going before the board well before the end of the year. I think it should be extended well into 2021. I mean, you're talking here about public comment. Where's the public time? Obviously, people under the current circumstances can't really get together to review this plan. I know this isn't a legal document, but clearly this is going to be used to alter the town zoning laws. And this is a lot of good work's going into this, but this is a vanilla document that's going to be approved somehow by the town with very little changes. It's not this document that is of concern to me. It's this document being used by development interests, for example, to justify changes in the zoning laws that are going to result in massive sprawl in East Greenbush. Residential units, apartments, houses, or bad commercial development. I see it now at my part of town here, 3rd Avenue extension of Route 4. Traffic is a mess there. So I'm concerned about rushing this through now because of the circumstances that have occurred throughout the country.
Thank you, sir. We can certainly talk with the town about that schedule, and I think part of it might be, what we hear back from the committee in terms of their review and working through that process to see, where we are. But I do think, where we are right now is where we would have been in March and April.
Can I say something?
Sure.
I hear Frank, I really do. I think what you guys have done is set up a very clear process. You've set up a very clear document. The public has had massive input into this. And I think, Frank, now the process will set its own pace. For example, if this committee does a public hearing and there's all kinds of issues and all kinds of problems, you go back to the drawing board. Same thing with the town board. If town board holds a public hearing under these circumstances, as Frank points out, what I've been doing is continuing public hearings so that public has a second time or a third time. Because this is going to lead to amending the zoning map and then the GEIS document, we need the process to be as tight as it can be. But we're not going to artificially impose a deadline. We're going to let the process play out. I think what you've done here is, and let me just say this because we made a decision to hire you guys, and it was the right decision. You guys have done a great job with this. The public engagement has been good. This draft is in a kind of shape that this committee can work with. And the way that you set up the implementation stuff can be worked with. So the path is clear, but Frank's point is well taken. The timing, it's going to be set by how smooth the path is. And so I just feel like everybody's done a great job with this, and we're in a position, and I hope, Frank, this is what happens, is we're in a position to do a really good plan that is going to
preclude the kind of nonsense in the zoning map that Frank's referring to. And I think that, I don't want to say seamlessly, but, if we do these right and we stay on them, we'll get where we're going. The town board, I've been setting them up, as you guys know, so that they're informed, so when it comes to us, we're not sitting there saying, what the hell is this? What does this mean? We'll be ready when it gets to us, and a public hearing for the town board could take forever. It could take 3 months. If that's the sentiment that's expressed in those hearings. So Frank makes some good points, and I know, and Frank, as the person who kind of told him get it done by the end of the year, I do hear you, I really do. But Jackie, I do want to thank you and Andrew, because this is how this should work. And when we started down this road, and me and Tina McTierney as the liaison to the planning department, and Adam, we set out a vision of how this would work in terms of public input, in terms of organization, in terms of review. And you guys have hit every mark. And it's been exactly what I was looking for. But now the important part, and this gets back to Frank's point, the important part is to bring it home correctly. And you've set us up, so we really should be able to do that. Between this committee, the public, and the town board, we really should be able to bring this home the way we envision. So I'm very excited about it, and reading the draft was fun for me, because there's so much good stuff in there. There's a platform for decision making that is the next phase. So these guys have done great. You guys have done great, and I couldn't be happier right now with the process. But the deadline is imposed and artificial in one regard, but that's how we roll here to get things done.
Thank you very much. Frank, to your point, we're here to support this process, whatever time it takes to do that. And so, but we would ask that, when the public engagement process is advertised and is put into place, please help us spread the word so that folks know that we're looking for engagement again. Because it has been a while since we have engaged with the public. All right. Any comments?
I think Jack makes a great point. If there's no issues with the draft document, there's no reason to hold up the timeline for, as far as the public or whoever has input on the draft.
Well, seeing no other members of the public, again, thank you for coming out. We appreciate it. And to the committee, thanks for your work. And we look forward to getting your comments back. I think that's all we have. For those members of the public that might be listening in, if you want more information, there is a webpage for the comprehensive plan on eastgreenbush.org. And you can email comments to compplanupdate@eastgreenbush. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good
Thank you.
night.